Hey folks, Mr. Dell here. We are looking at a problem that has us take some data and put it as a circle graph. Create a circle graph based on some data. So this is from CPM's course 3, and it's 7.1.1, okay? And it's number 7-8. So it says a group of classmates surveyed how other students travel to school. The results of the survey are shown in the table at the right. Make a circle graph showing the results of the survey using percents. Okay. So this is my table. This is the data that I've got, right? So I can see based on this table, what is it saying? Mode of transportation. So number of students, 90 students take the bus, 30 students ride their bike, 75 students ride in a car, and 45 walk. So that's their mode of transportation to get to school. So it wants me to make a circle graph, but using percents. Right now, I have just the raw numbers of how many students. So how do I figure out the percent? Remember, percent is always something over the total, right? So I first have to figure out the total. So the total number of students we're dealing with, I need to add these numbers up. So let's see. So if I add up 0, carry the 1, I get 240. So there's a total of 240 students in this survey. So, what is the percent of those riding the bus? Well, what we start with for figuring out percent, we start with the fraction, which is 90 out of 240. So there's 90 out of 240 students riding the bus. Now I got to figure out what is that as a percent, right? So there's a couple ways to do this. If you were allowed a calculator, I'll show you that in just a moment. But there's also a way to do this without a calculator. So let's do that. So I'm going to do my math over here. I'm going to show you. So 90 over 240. How do I make that into a percent? Remember, a percent is something over 100, right? Your percent is always something over 100. If you can get this fraction to equal over 100, then you know what your percent is. So I'm going to just start by simplifying this. And I can see that I know it's divisible by 10 because they both end in 0. But I also know that 9 and 24 are divisible by 3. So I know that this means it's divisible by 30. So top and bottom are divisible by 30. So 90 divided by 30 is 3. 240 divided by 30 is 8. So it's 3/8. So now we got to think, okay, how do I get 3/8 to be something over 100? What times 8 is 100, right? So that's how I want to figure this out. I realize I didn't leave myself a room. So I need to come up with that giant one that creates 100 on the bottom. So 8 times what is 100? Well, to do that is we're going to have to do the division to figure out how many times does 8 go into 100, right? So I could, let's see, I'm running out of room here. I'm going to ignore that question, and we're going to just say 100 divided by 8 goes in once. Subtract 20 goes in there twice. 16 subtract, I get 4. Oops. There we go. Weren't seeing what I'm doing. Add my 0, bring it down, and now I get 5. So it's 12.5. So 8 times 12.5 is 100, right? So that's my giant one is 12.5. So 12.5 times 12.5, 8 times 12.5 is 100. So what is 3 times 12.5? Well, 3 times 12.5 is 37.5. So right there's my percent. So the bus, if I'm going to now figure out my percentages for the bus would be 37.5%. All right. So now I got to figure out the other ones too. So you could continue doing this route where we're using giant ones in the math here, but I'm also going to show you how to do this with a calculator, because what we've got is just simply now I need to, for the bike ride, it's 30 over 240. How to do that with a calculator would be finding a calculator. There we go. right? So remember, percent is always the taking the decimal version. So you can do this by converting that to a decimal. So to convert 30 over 240 to decimal is dividing 30 by 240. And that gives you an answer of 0.125, right? So that equals 0.125. And then that's the decimal. So then to make that a percent, you move the decimal over twice. Or the other thing would be to look at it as multiplying by 100, because that's what percents are based off. So that's 12.5%. So the bike is 12.5%. All right. So there's bike. Now car, right? A car. So my fraction for my car is 75 over 240, right? Everything's over 240 because that's the total. So for that one, again, we'll use the calculator. So 75 divided by 240 equals, in this case, 0.3125. So what percent is that? So that percent, I'm going to crowding my numbers in here, would be 31.25%. My last one, walk, would be 45 out of, so divisible by 240, right? 45 out of 240. So we do that math and we get 18 or 1.1875. So again, move that decimal place twice when you're doing percents. And so that number is 18.75%. So there's my percentages. And just to make sure I did all my math right, if I add these percentages up, they better equal 100. So that's always a good thing to do. Is maybe I'll just do that on a calculator. So just to confirm I did my math right. So 37.5 plus 12.5 plus 31.25 plus 18.75, and we get 100. So yes. So had to add up to the 100%. So we're good. All right. So had to do the math here. And like I said, in this, because these numbers weren't so kind to us, the decimal was the way to, or the calculator was the way to go. If this was a test question, and probably give you nicer numbers that you could find the percent without a calculator. So here we have now our percentages. So now I want to create a circle graph. To find these exact locations in the central angles would be a lot of work, but they just want us to kind of make an estimated result of what this looks like. So if I think about it, I have 37.5 and I have 31.25. So 37.5, it's a bit bigger than a third, right? If you think about what is 1/3, 1/3 is 33%, right? If 1/3 is 33%, so if I cut this thing up and I visualize a third would be right about here, right? Let me use a pencil so I can erase and show you what I mean. I had a pencil. Here's one. So if I were to cut this up like this, I just cut it up in thirds, right? 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So I'm going to estimate it to be a little bit bigger than a third because 1/3 is 33%. So I'm going to bring it down just a tiny bit bigger. So I'm going to look at this right here. This part of the pie is going to be my 37.5, which is bus. So I label it bus, and I also put the percent in there, so that way we can see the numbers. Okay. And then I'm going to look at this other one here, the ride the bike, or excuse me, the ride in the car is 31.25, which 31.25% would be just a little less than a third. So I had my third here, right, with my pencil. So I'm going to just make that just a little bit smaller than a third. And we're going to call that one then the ride in a car. So the car ride is 31.25%. So now I've got just this stuff left over here, and I've got a 12.5 and an 18.5. So if I were to cut the remainder in half, half would be this, right? If I were to split it equally in half, but it's not. So one is a little bigger than the other. So the The walk is a little bigger, so I might move my line over just a tad, and so you can see the difference. So this is going to be walking at 18.75%. And the last one was bike. Running out of room here, bike, and I'll put my percent out here at 12.5%. All right. So again, let's review. What was the process? Finding the percent of each of these modes of transportation, doing the math, use your calculator, how to get from a fraction to a percent, taking those percentages and estimating where and how big of the piece of pie each of them get based on their percent. Okay. There we go.